And one city in the world has gone completely meat-free. So, thankfully, not here in West Texas. Not here in West Texas. That would be real news. In studio with me right now, and it's not the city of Lubbock, Mayor Dan Pope in studio. Lubbock is not going meat-free.
Long live beef.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well.
Hey, is Trump finished with his speech?
I think he just wrapped up.
Okay, good.
He just
Good.
wrapped up the speech.
I knew you'd be on top of that. Thank you.
It was a long speech, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I didn't. I when it got to the hour mark, I saw a tweet at the hour mark, and anyway, I was doing other things. I must admit it by that point.
Yeah, I was starting to doze off by it. I had read the speech beforehand, so I knew what was going to be what he was going to say. And so, at the hour mark, I just started falling asleep. One tweet that I saw is that he was on page 48 of 85 at the hour mark. But no, he wrapped it up. Will you be giving any hour and a half speeches anytime soon?
No, sir.
Okay. You are, of course, mayor of Lubbock, still the new mayor of Lubbock. And how's it gone so far?
It's been great. It's fast and furious, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm learning a lot. I'm really glad that I gave it a shot, and I'm glad I'm getting a chance to serve. And so we've got a lot of opportunities. We've got a lot of challenges, but I think we're up to it.
Very cool. We'll talk about some of those challenges, being the budget here in a little bit.
Sure.
I want to start off talking about a press conference that you and the chief of police held earlier this week, and we all know what's been going on around the country, in Dallas and Baton Rouge and other cities where officers have been targeted now. You announced during that press conference that you are at least planning on having some town halls starting next month. What do you think the race relations look like here in this city between the citizens and the police? And then we'll start there.
Well, I think it's generally pretty good, but I don't think you can take anything for granted. And I don't know that it's all race relations. I think it's this overall communications. I have two college-age kids, and sometimes I get to look through their eyes, and for whatever reason, there's a distrust. And sometimes it even teeters towards disdain for law enforcement. Maybe it's part of being 19 and 21, but they weren't raised in a family that feels that way. And
right.
And so I think I think we're generally very fortunate to be where we are, but I do believe we can't take anything for granted.
The town halls that you're planning, I assume they're still in the planning stages. I think you said that they're going to start this next month. Is that correct?
We're going to have them 2 weeks from this morning. We're going to have a breakfast meeting, bring some of the stakeholders together from all parts of town. Certainly, there's been some preachers in the community that have been meeting, working on this. A lot of African American preachers, but not exclusively so. We'll add a component of business to that, some elected officials, some of the sort of the nonprofit kind of just sort of community service kind of group. We'll try to then lay out a maybe 2 or 3 or 4 kind of forums. I think it's more. It's somebody asked me this week, what's the end point? What's the goal?
Right.
Which it's a hard thing to define. I always like to start with why and work from there. I mean, I think a problem well defined is you're about 60% to solving a problem if you can define it well. And I think in this case, what we want to accomplish is, first of all, we want to build relationships. We want people to know each other. We want to be able to look across the table and have conversation and be in community in that regard. And so it's this idea of understanding what's important, understanding what the concerns are. How can we be better? Mm-hmm. We're fortunate to have a police chief who wants to be in the lead on this. We're also fortunate to have a lot of community stakeholders that feel like this is worth their time. So we won't focus on just East Lubbock. I think we'll have 3 or 4 of these, and we'll have them in different parts of town. I think the idea is that we continue this dialogue that is about how we raise the consciousness of what's important, how we can be civil to each other. It's just, we're not going to always agree. We don't want everybody to always agree, but we should be able to do that without bringing out our gun, to disagree without bringing out guns. That to me is this, guns there's a real great purpose for guns, but settling arguments, I don't think is a great way to do that.
Do you have the first date in mind and where it's going to be and what time, or is that still kind of a work in progress?
It's a work in progress.
Okay.
I think we'll start probably. My recommendation, we would start in East Lubbock and maybe someplace like Dunbar Middle School. I mean, we need to go to if you go to a church, one of our churches, you need to find some kind of ground that's common ground, and so I would hope maybe one of the community centers, maybe May Simmons. Those are a couple of things we've talked about, but I would think that we'd have one of those on. By the middle of August, we'd have had one of those, and maybe a couple weeks later another one, maybe over a series of 6 or 8 weeks. I mean, we're in the middle of budget right now. We've
sure,
that's got to be job one for us at a council, but this is also very important. And we're really just scheduling and then listening. I mean, it's not like we're going to run these things.
Many times, and this, when you have town halls or people who get together and discuss issues where there can be some controversy, it turns into a complaining session. Yeah. There are other words too.
I used a different word in the press conference the other day, but yes, that's we're not. That's that's what we're going to have some ground rules. I think that's one of the things we're going to try to craft when we get together is what are our ground rules, and that would be somebody dominating the conversation. As a matter, I think if you're gonna complain, you need to also bring a solution. This doesn't need to be one of those kind of sessions that's controlled by 2 or 3 sore heads that you're never going to satisfy.
Right.
And then that's something you go into with your eyes open. You're going to have to deal with something like that.
What is the overall mood of the police department here in Lubbock? We keep hearing stories that now they're going to be, I think, detectives and some of those who are have been working behind the desk. They're going to be put on patrol just because of the low number of people that we have on patrol. So what's the general mood, you think, of the police department from what you've heard?
Well, I don't know that I can assess the general mood. I can tell you that it's got to be very difficult to be a police officer today anywhere in the country. I mean, you've got to really be questioning the madness around us. And I think we all can sense that. I mean, I think that's it's just really difficult for me to wrap my thought process around the fact that our cops are being assassinated.
Yeah.
But I do think that we've got good things going on here locally. We're as close as we've been in many, many years to being fully staffed. We're within 20 of being fully staffed. We've got we hope to have another big class. We've got a number that have gotten through the first couple steps. We're in that background check phase right now. Chief Stevens made a decision, which I support, to move some folks from desk jobs to the patrol, just because the idea that he wants officers closer to citizens.
Right.
No change in title, no change in pay. Generally, not much change in hours. The idea will be that when we're able to fill those patrol positions, then they'll go back to their detective roles or wherever. I think it made a lot of sense. To me, it was a good move. I know there's not everybody's happy about it, but I think we'll work through those situations. I think generally, to the way I can sense it, the relationship's pretty good.
When you said that we're 20 positions short as of right now, is that factoring in the detectives or those who are working desk jobs going into patrol?
No.
Okay.
No. That's before we made that. And my understanding is we've got those patrol positions completely filled now, where we're carrying our openings on the detective side. And if we need to pull resources into something, he can do that. I mean, he needs the flexibility to do those kind of things. But no, we would be 20 patrol positions short.
Okay. When we come back, we have a budget to talk about, and the new city council being thrown into budget season. So we'll talk about that and all the bumps and bruises that come along with budget season for the Lubbock City Council. Mayor Dan Pope in studio. Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope In studio with me right now, we have been talking about the town halls, which you'll get more information on those once dates are settled, looking like maybe mid to late August when those will get underway regarding the police and the community and the relationship there. One thing, when you were elected mayor, it was right into budget season, and the council, when it was finally set, already in budget season. So give us an update where we are on the budget right now.
Okay, so we saw the budget last Thursday for the first time. It's pretty daunting, frankly. It's even having been through 9 school budgets, it's a different animal. It's much more complex, 3.5 times the size.
Right.
I think there's good news in the budget. Let's start with that. I think the good news is that the proposed budget does not include a tax increase. I don't think there's any stomach for a tax increase. I think property taxes are going to stay the same. That'll be the first time in 3 years that's happened. That's something I think we want to accomplish. I think there's more pay as you go in this budget. So in other words, less debt, more pay as you go. We're going to do a number of work sessions. I'll talk about that in just a second. But I think those are the positives in this. I think the downside to it is the general fund is where all the pressure is on the budget. Mm-hmm. The business units, water, electricity, stormwater, through the rates, what the rates that our citizens pay, they generally support themselves and are pretty well run in that regard. The general fund is everything else. So it's police, fire, parks, streets. That's where your challenge is, finding the funding there. And as your debt goes up, particularly as COs have been issued, that debt going up means that more of the property tax is going to fund debt than it is for the general fund. And that's one of the reasons we need to quit adding to our debt. So I guess that's a snapshot on the thing. It's I think one of the big challenges we've got is that we hadn't figured out how to pay for street maintenance. There's not the way it's proposed is that it would be done through debt, and I don't think that's something we want to do. We've been working our way. There was a period of time where most of it was done through debt, and even though it's shorter term debt, it's not. I don't think it's a good financial decision. We've worked our way down to where it's less and less of that, but we're sort of a bit in a corner on that. So we'll work on that. We're going to start. We'll have a work session on next Thursday before our council meeting at I think 1:30. It's about what we think right now for a couple hours, and then we plan on having a series of work sessions in August. So right now, tentatively on Tuesday evenings, 4 to 6, just every Tuesday, and we'll take a certain part of the pieces of the budget and work on those. And we've broken them into pieces. And so the idea would be that by the end of August, we may still do some of it in work session at our council meetings, but do it in public. Number one, do it in pieces that we can, bite off and chew and understand.
Right.
And work towards that idea that we can gain consensus around, okay, here's how we need to go with this piece. So we don't get to that nth hour and have to make some kind of deal, and we look back and go, man, I wish we'd had a little more time to consider this. We'd like to approve the budget. The goal is that we do it by that first council meeting in September, which is I think it's September the 8th this year, so it's a little bit early, and that's a little bit of a challenge. But we can do that. We've got a plan in place to do that. So that's where we are.
Visiting with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope in studio, discussing the budget and taking the budget bit by bit is what they're going to do, and take a look at it. Is there something when you've been going through the budget and looking at it, have you noticed anything where you just look at it and say, that doesn't need to be in there? We can reduce this, or we can cut this completely.
I think there's some items in there that I have questions about. I think one of the areas that I want to have questions, talk more about is this idea that in some of our business units, we've got plenty of cash reserves, we have a policy level. In some cases, we have more than policy, which is good business, but more than policy. At that point, that cash needs to be put to use. Either it needs to have it needs to be part of your long-term plan. I'm going to use it this year, next year, the year after as I make capital investment, or we need to use it for the ongoing kind of items. So you don't need to be financing a piece of street equipment if you've got those reserves there,
right,
and you don't have, and they're above policy limit. And so that's part of this pay as you go. It's a change in philosophy. I really applaud the city manager and staff for getting on board, but we've got a ways to go there. And I see some opportunities for that inside the budget itself. I would say that I don't know enough about it yet to say there's things that we don't need to be doing. I do know that there's areas of the budget that I look at and go, wow, that's a place that I wish we could make more investments. However, in the situation we're in, we may not be able to.
Right. I know at the last couple of meetings, I think parks have been an issue, or you've had at least people who have come to the city council and talk about park improvements. Is that something we can anticipate in the budget, or is that something where the council says, no, we can't look at that, the money's not there?
It's a great question. That's what I was talking about. That's what I was alluding to a minute ago. I mean, we've got 81 parks, right. Roughly right. My way of thinking is that if you had 81 of anything, you owned them, there's always some kind of ongoing maintenance that needs to be doing. And we mow them and we take care of them, but there are no capital projects in the budget for any of those parks. That's, some people probably go, that's great. Well, I look at it and go, I wish we were be able to do a couple capital projects every year. I'm not suggesting that we're building new grand things. It may just be taking care of what we have in those, just the upkeep for our bandstands or restroom facilities, or we're trying to replace playground equipment and have been doing some of that. So, parks is one of the areas that is challenged in our budget and has been. And I think
and it's something you hear about from citizens who
do.
Show up to city council.
Well, not only city council. I mean, I'm at the home builders luncheon last week, and they want to talk about parks. And I was walking my dog there, walking the dog the other day, and got stopped by a citizen that wants to talk about parks. I mean, we've got to get to where we can have those conversations. Right now, though, I don't see big investment in parks next year. That's one of those things that I think as a community, Chad, we need to talk about and put on a bond election. I mean, if we're going to do some significant upgrades in our parks, let's put it to the citizens to vote on it. Let's let them know how they will pay for it. And they don't have to be 20 or 30 year debt. We can pay for it in a little quicker bit of time than that. But
and I think that's something that former Mayor Robertson brought up at one of his last council meetings was, maybe this needs to be a bond issue.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to look at something like that, but not right now.
Can you hang around for one more segment?
Sure.
Okay, great. When we come back, we will talk more about the budget and Lubbock City Council. All right, Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO, our final segment with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope in studio. We have been talking about the budget. A couple more issues with the budget, or at least related to that, and one of them would be the stormwater fee, and I don't know how often that's brought up at City Hall, but you remember this last year. There was a controversy surrounding the stormwater fee, and it was sort of left out there. Hey, we're going to investigate. We're going to see what we can do to make not everybody happy, but at least some people happy with this. Where are we as far as an updated stormwater structure, fee, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, so the budget itself today, it's regardless of what we do, it's got to be budget neutral, okay? So I think the budget we're looking at has the existing fee structure in place.
Okay.
If we make changes, it's still got to add up to the same revenue because we've got debt to cover. I mean, we've got bonds to cover. So I know that the council, after it sort of blew up last year, I know the council said, hey, we think we might do it like this. we've got to make that decision. We've not. That was certainly not a binding decision. We'll deal with that pretty quickly.
Have you heard from business? I mean, you're a business owner. Yeah, Have you heard from other business owners?
I generally think there's some winners and losers. There always are. My way of thinking is, make sure I think I've got these numbers right. We've got about 55% of the property in the community is commercial, let's say non-residential.
Okay.
I mean, that would include, so that's businesses, churches, not for profit. And 45 is the other part's residential. We need to find a way. My way of thinking is that the commercial side or the non-residential needs to pay about 55%, and that the residential needs to pay the 45%. And how we get there is, to me, is there's a lot of avenues. I know that our churches were one of the losers with the new rates. I mean, I get that. But at the same time, we've got to have a discussion with our churches don't pay property tax. Our churches get very, very advantaged electric rates from LP&L. We need to make sure that churches need to be part of the solution. And so, generally I think the buzz and the frustration from a lot of, business has gone away. I really wish we'd have done a better job before we announced the rates at explaining why we were doing and what we were doing. And I think we missed an opportunity there, Chad.
Something that was brought up during the mayoral race and something you talked about and others talked about, and it was severe weather season during that time. Now we're I don't want to say we're out of that, but we're probably are. Tornado sirens. That's something you said eventually we may need to look at that, see if we can put it in the budget, not necessarily do a bond election. Is that something that's going to be brought up in this budget?
We're going to talk about it. I mean, it's not in the budget today. We're going to talk about it, and it may not be a 16-17 budget item. It may be a down the road kind of thing, but we're going to talk about it. Generally, as I talk to folks in the community about this, there are a lot of sentiments about it on both sides. I think many more people think it's a good idea than those that don't think it's a good idea. I think generally people are not against early warning. It's just how we do it. Mm-hmm. And my comment during the election, I've said it sitting in this chair, was if we can do it for $2 million, I think we need to find a way to do it.
Right.
I don't know that we can do it for $2 million. That was some of the numbers that were proposed by the last bond steering committee, but we're going to at least have a discussion about it, and we'll see where we end up. I don't know where the council is. I know the council's not 7-0 on it. I think it's probably split down the middle. If it comes down to do we fund street maintenance out of operating dollars, or do we do tornado sirens? I think we need to take care of our streets first, and then we find a way to do the tornado sirens at some time.
I don't think we've gotten an update on Citizens Tower in a while. So what's going on with Citizens Tower? I think y'all recently took a tour of that, right?
We didn't. I have taken a tour. Mr. Massingale and I took a tour. We're going to do a media tour here soon. We're about to the point where we can have you guys there. We did a facility tour last week. We did not go to Citizens Tower. It's not quite to the point where we want a big crowd in there.
Okay.
The plans, Perkins and Will be here next Thursday. They'll be briefing us in work session, so we'll get an update. The public will get an update. I think we'll have construction ready plans in the fourth quarter. Right now we've done what we think we've done all the abatement, unless we find something that's we haven't seen, and it's just a big demolition job right now. The way we got there is maybe not exactly how I would have gotten there, but we're there now, and we've got a hand that we got to play, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think we got a chance to do some really unique things. I think it can be citizen friendly. I think we can make it a lot easier to do business with the city of Lubbock, and I think that's probably a big part of what we're trying to accomplish.
All right, Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope, appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I look forward to coming back.
Absolutely, anytime.